many fans you were in this year.
Hello and welcome back to coverage of the PDGA EUROTOUR, the second stop here at Konopiście Open 2023. We are super excited to be bringing you this round 1 back 9 MPO feature card coverage brought to you by MDG Media. We are on an iconic course full of history with an amazing card for you here today. I'm Connor Wood and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
Hello guys, excited to see this back 9. We had some decent scores on the card on the front, but nothing incredible as we see the top 10 not from our card. Roni Rönkkönen, good friend of mine, playing an incredible 7 under front 9. Couple of players, Daniel Davidsson, Hjalmar Fredriksson at 6 under. Bunch of players at 5 under through the front. And then we see from our card, Niklas Anttila, cracking the top 10. Hopefully trying to improve on that during the back 9.
And we'll kick off the back 9 here on hole 10. A 112 meter par 3, the fairway slopes softly downhill as well as left to right. You also have a double mando, although it's quite wide and forgiving, it will punish any errant shots as you need to come between these two trees and fight your way to this green. I think for a lot of players, a turnover backhand that flattens out at the end, maybe an Anheuser release with a stable disc, or if you like it, the forehand hyzer is also a definite potential line.
Yeah, the new addition for this year is the double mando, making this hole much more difficult. Not for this shot though, as Paul throws the forehand, although he does still miss the left side of the mando. That's a bit of an errant Anheuser release there with the forehand, as we see a couple of those already on the front 9 from Paul. So he's gonna have to go to the drop zone here. Unfortunate, but and Jakub going with a bit of a better looking forehand there. Just battling the ceiling of the two mando trees, and he's inside the circle there.
Yeah, we saw Jakub using the height to ensure the fade. Niklas here pushing that second mando tree, but slides in right before he'll be at circle's edge putting for birdie. This is definitely a touchy forehand line. I don't think it's easy at this distance, despite being downhill, to go full hyzer, but you also really don't want any Anheuser result at all. We see the traditional backhand line from Petr here, turning it over, finds a fade just a little bit too early, but also a very clean line between the two mandos.
Yeah, that was a good shot from Petr there. With the backhand, it's kind of difficult to turn the disc over late enough to make it through the mandos. But he did a great job of it, just getting that late turn even with a high release. And as we see Paul missing from the drop zone. And Jakub actually outside the circle puts it in the middle of the basket, but somehow gets the speed out even with his nose up spin putt. I don't know how that's possible. Let's see it again. Just a little bit high in the chains, but not really the putt's fault there, rather the basket's fault.
Slow notion. That was mean. Petr there with a good bid just off the right side. Niklas now at a similar distance. That clean putting stroke coming through. Has a really nice slow movement and then a lag between the elbow and wrist joints, getting a nice spin putt out. Always a pleasure to watch Niklas putt. And Paul in for the bogey after playing from the drop zone.
Yeah, this is I'm sure many of these players are slightly disappointed with their par, or Paul even with the bogey here, since it's definitely not a gimme, but it's also one of the holes that you would really like to birdie starting off this back 9.
And you touched on it, but we have seen some tough releases from Paul from the forehand. We'll see if he continues to lean on that or make some adjustments. I think we're past the majority of forehand-friendly holes, but there's definitely room to still throw them as we move to hole 11, a 261-meter par 4 going first straight and then bending to the right, softly downhill. You have, once you break through this last gap of big trees, an enormous guardian tree with an extremely low ceiling. as the drone flies is one of the two ways to enter the green, as you'll see it swing around here into the open and then back to the right. Some players will opt, especially the left-handed players, to play around where the drone flies. A lot of players will opt to try and go under or through the enormous Guardian, sort of just playing their luck and blasting one through on the second.
Yeah, talking about forehand, it's certainly a very forehand-friendly approach here. And off the drive, you really just want to stay between the two big forests on the left and right side of the fairway. As we see Niklas going with a slightly understable distance driver, trying to keep it kind of low for the disc not to fade too far left. And that was actually very good and a very long drive, getting way past the 150 meter stake, showing off that angle control and the distance that he has.
Yeah, an amazing shot from Niklas there. Jakub going to need this to hold some turn, but looks to be flattening out. He will find that familiar left side tree. I think he will not be the only one of the day hitting that. The most common result for the backhand shot off the tee, as Petr now on a similar line will need this to hold the turn as well, as he is really battling with the width of the fairway but uses all of it. He skips right up there to where Niklas's shot is. Another amazing placement off the tee.
Yeah, Niklas and Petr both only going to have about just above 100 meters to the basket. As we see Paul throwing a beautiful flip-up hyzer to flat shot in the middle of the fairway, and even a little bit further than Petr and Niklas. That was probably past 160 meters on a low, pretty much flat line.
Jakub will be up first from this obstructed, awkward throw, shaping a big forehand flex. Now this is a long shot, but significantly downhill, gets a full flight and an incredible accuracy to swing that back in with the fade around the tree. There's a smile from him. From a tricky lie, gets knuckles from Anttila. That was an incredible upshot.
Yeah, that was certainly incredible. And the approach, as you said, pretty touchy with the distance control, because if you go far past this tree, you might be battling the long bushes, as we actually see Petr going there. He's going to be inside the circle, so hopefully a look from there, but he's going to have some bushes to contend with.
Anttila hugging this tree, doesn't quite battle around it fully, will drop underneath and be left with likely a off-the-knee putt. As we see Paul from an ideal location, taking it higher and wider. This will mitigate both the long distance as well as the width, but a little bit too wide and too nose up, as he does not push forwards enough to clear the tree. Just goes to show you how enormous this last Guardian is.
You could see Paul's caddy, Jonas, a really famous caddy in Finland, has won many European Open titles with Paul, as Paul smacks it in from outside the circle. Looks like he had a pretty good look, actually, even with a low ceiling from there. That's a really good putt. Niklas to do the same. Really solid looking stroke once again. He's really feeling it on the putting green.
Solid putts from the low ceiling. And Jakub as well, from an ideal approach from a tricky lie, really putting in the work to give himself the chance, and he capitalizes. As we see Petr here from that long rough, it is very thick, just 7 or so meters behind the basket. You can find thick rough. And Petr off the band gets a soft rollback towards him, but likely a short manageable putt for his birdie. Par now.
Yeah, you can see it's one of the holes on the course that actually has thick rough. It's not a very, very challenging course by the rough. Most of the fairways are really wide, and even if you go outside the fairway, you only have some branches and leaves to contend with. But Petr showing off one of the thickest roughs on the course.
You see here hole 12, a par 4 sitting at 201 meters, one of the most daunting holes on the course. You have this initial tunnel that you need to hit going left to right. You ideally want a disc that goes right the entire way and maybe even makes a soft horseshoe shape. As we arrive here towards the FPO tee, you then have a water carry of roughly 70 meters that you need to get over towards this island green. You can play to the right side where these players are walking, but it's a very uncommon line. A lot of players, especially if they're playing for birdie on this hole, will try to cross where you can find danger. It's a tough hole that can find you quickly in trouble with an imperfect position.
Yeah, it's really, even though the approach looks very difficult, it's actually the tee shot that is the most difficult on this hole. As we can see, Niklas going with an understable mid-range. The line is really touchy. As you said, you really want the disc to be holding the turn all the way to the right and hopefully starting to glide down towards the sweet spot. As we see, Niklas had the turn part correct but didn't get the glide towards the right. So he ends up cut rolling towards the left side of the fairway. Jakub also going really high with the turnover. Very aggressive line there. Let's see if he gets the hold, and that's an incredible tee shot. He's going to be at the mouth of the gap, only about 90 to 95 meters to the basket from there.
And a lot of players will opt with a not ideal tee shot to just pitch up to that FPO tee to ensure they can carry over the water safely. Paul's disc as well, holding that turn, gets a little bit of a cut roll, quite common considering they're trying to turn it over the whole way on Anheuser. The really perfect shots will pan out to flat at the end, having a soft landing. We see Petr now getting a little bit less height than the others. This has a lot of turn. As he flattens it out, exactly as I mentioned, gets a soft pan out at the end, ensuring no cut roll. He is also in an ideal position. Some great tee shots from our feature card. I think Niklas here simply laying up to before the water, as from where he is, the ceiling is too low, I think, to consider battling over it on the first shot.
Yeah, especially with the fence that he has to contend with with this run-up, or rather standstill shot here. Puts it to the perfect sweet spot, and he's going to have only about 85 meters to the basket from there. Paul going aggressive over the water, even from over 100 meters away. Perfectly through the gap, and that was just beautiful. That's a great shot. Really able to control that distance and get it over the basket with over the water, with the disc still flying straight.
Yeah, incredible confidence there and execution from Paul. We see Jakub from a prime placement playing a soft hyzer, I think wanting that to flip up to flat. He bleeds out a little bit left and will have a tree in his way for putting stroke at about edge of circle, but still a fantastic result to be putting for birdie on this very tough hole.
Petr going with a bit of a low shot here, hope to get over the water. Looks like he did actually unfortunately stay short of the OB line. Even though he's not in the water, the OB line is a couple of meters over the water on the other side. Niklas throwing a hard shot to the hillside, really utilizing that backstop. Throwing it pretty hard on hyzer, flipping up and just landing inside the bullseye there.
So we see what Petr is left with here. If you do not cross to safety, and he just only barely sneaks into the inbounds there on his second one over the water. We see he's left with an uphill circle 2-putt now. So he gives it a bid just a little bit low. That is a really big power required from way down there on the hill.
Yeah, as we see Jakub slamming a great putt from, I think, just outside the edge of the circle there. This is probably the last hole on the course that has potential for a big number, as Petr is unfortunately going to show us. Paul tapping in that great birdie. Niklas with a good par after the slightly errant drive. And Petr unfortunately taking the double bogey 6. But that's actually a common score on this hole, because if you throw once in the water and maybe miss a putt, then you easily can get the double bogey.
You take a breath after hole 12 and you go to hole 13. A par 3 at 108 meters. Once again, one of the more open shots, very birdie friendly, considering the other holes on this course. You have a soft left to right shape as well as sloping downhill, and of course an elevated basket to add that extra element of difficulty on the putting green. You can play the forehand, you can play the turnover backhand. What's really important is that you hit the fairway cleanly, as you have a lot of branches on the left and the right that will shut down your full flight and prevent you from getting the distance required.
Paul looks to be going with a slow disc, either a putter or a mid-range, playing the conventional shot towards the left side of the fairway, just slightly turning. He's actually inside the circle there. That's a great disc choice and great angle control, really matching the hillside, getting that perfect flat landing and zero skip. As we see Jakub doing the same, even better inside the bullseye there. And what's good to note is that this hole is actually starting the easiest, most scoreable stretch on the entire course. These last 6 holes are certainly holes that these players would like to get at least 3, even 4, ideally even 5 or 6 birdies on. So as we saw Niklas throwing a decent shot, I think just on the edge of the circle there.
Petr now on the tee, shaping a similar looking line as all of these guys, just throwing darts to the green. He will be looking to secure his first birdie of the back 9 here. As we walk, you see the great crowd on the left, some huge enthusiasm for disc golf. We have Niklas up first with a long putt to the elevated basket. Oh, and he gave it the height and just a bit too much. A great line just off the band. You can see his disappointment. Hole 13 is one of the easier birdies, although never easy. Petr, too, doesn't connect with the putt.
Yeah, and another elevated basket. New addition from the past years, making this one of the easier holes, actually just a tad bit more difficult, as we see Paul putting it in the middle from about 5 meters. That's a good cleanup there. And yeah, certainly not a particularly scary green, but the elevated basket plus the slight left to right slope of the green just makes putting slightly more difficult on this green.
And I appreciate the course design on some of these very attackable par 3s. Not only does it require the shot that is considered maybe an easier shot, but also a great concentration on the green as well. I think it's a good balance to the course here. We arrive now on hole 14. Par 4 at 256 meters. You have this wide open fairway to open your tee shot into. You want a hyzer that fades after this tree on the left and before this tree on the right. There is a less traditional fairway to the right side if you overturn, although it increases the distance required to get to the basket quite significantly. A really good hyzer will get through that gap and leave you with a long straight shot of roughly 120 meters uphill. You have a nice backstop here to really blast your drive into. I think a lot of players will be going driver into fairway or double distance driver, given that it is uphill on the second and still a 256 meter par 4. But once you position your tee shot well, it's just a wide open blast into the green.
Yeah, this is certainly another very scoreable hole, especially for these big throwing players, as we see Paul going with the traditional hyzer shot, just trying to fade before the trees on the backside. He's on the fairway slightly more right than he would like to be, so he really doesn't have room to swing the hyzer to the green, but he's going to have just a regular straight shot, about just above 100 meters left to the basket.
Niklas here. Jakub with a very similar line. Also just beating that tree. Will have a semi-open look. Apologies, the focus here on Jonas the caddy. As now we see Niklas shaping the hyzer, flip up to flat. He will need this to turn as he finds the left side rough. He will be heavily obstructed, and I think that likely is birdie out of play for Niklas.
Yeah, I agree. It's really one of the worst spots on the hole to be inside that left side tree. As we see Petr pulling it wide, but gets the skip under the branches of the long side tree, and he's also in the fairway. As we see Niklas having to go with some sort of patent pending from the knee. Probably even going a roller here. Looks like he gets it on a really good angle. Let's see where this goes. Very technical shot from Niklas. He was very far, maybe about 120 meters from the basket, and gets it to within long putt / approach distance. So that's a good shot there.
We see a nice swinging hyzer in from Jakub. Well placed. He almost even puts it in, fading just behind the basket. Very happy with that shot, I'm sure, leaving him a manageable birdie putt. We see Paul from a pretty ideal position now, likely able to just shape a big hyzer into the green. As we see exactly that, gives it the height and the width with the driver, swinging it into the backstop, digs it in, just outside bullseye.
Yeah, that's a great shot. And you can see on this hole, you can kind of utilize the backstop by almost trying to throw it in with the overstable disc. As we see, Petr, decent approach, he's gonna be inside the circle there. Niklas from way downtown, either trying to just lay it up or maybe give it a soft run. He's about 35 meters away.
As we see him put it up and drop it into the chains, Niklas Anttila from 30 plus meters into the basket. Look at him run this thing in. Look how many steps he's taking. He was so far away. Going uphill, just incredible use of his spin putt and an insane putting stroke to have that much distance uphill and the accuracy. That is just a highlight putt. Let's take another look, Elias.
Yeah, and wow, that was incredible. But we have seen this from Niklas multiple times throughout the year. From the US, he's been known to make some of these insanely long putts. You can see he's putting almost full effort into it. I think it was marked 36 meters away on UDIS, so that's just a huge putt. Even going uphill, probably playing closer to 40. That was incredible, really showing off that spin putt. Jakub sticks it in on the low left side of the basket. That's a good birdie there, and he's got a bit of a streak himself, 4 birdies in a row.
Semerád putting it together now as we see Petr just a little bit high off the band. Had 2 great throws to position himself there, but unable to capitalize. As we see Paul just a little bit deep of the basket, putting himself in, also securing 4 in a row, although that initial bogey on hole 10 is keeping him just 1 stroke behind Jakub Semerád, who is currently tied with Niklas Anttila, both of them 7 under. A great pace. Hole 15, a 228-meter par 4. This shot is softly sloping right to left as well as straight. You want really just 2 straight shots. I think a hyzer flip to maybe softly left fading shot off the tee positions you nicely. Going downhill, you can really try to bite off some distance, but not super necessary, as the second shot is also very manageable with a putter or mid-range, allowing you to attack this green. It is really 2 straight shots, controlling yourself in the fairway.
Yeah, on this hole, the fairway is sloping down towards the basket all the way from the tee. So if you just hit your driver on the correct angle, as we said, hyzer flipping up maybe to flat and finishing left, you're gonna pretty much automatically get a lot of distance on this hole. As we see Paul getting exactly that shape, flipping up to flat just perfectly, hopefully not moving too far left down the fairway. He's just on the edge of the left side, and he's probably gonna have a forehand look from there, I would assume.
We see Jakub here shaping a flex line, as he is so familiar with. Pushes that right side width nicely, swings it back in. That is a prime shot and a great location. Will likely have an open look to the green. We see Anttila now. Also playing the height and the turn. A little bit surprising to see them trying to bite off so much and not just playing the stock hyzer. As Niklas swings it in, will once again be obstructed, but we saw for him last hole that was no problem, still translating to birdie.
Yeah, as we see Petr also a bit of a turnover drive, making the low line drive really efficient. He gets a lot of distance. He's right next to Paul, but in the fairway. But yeah, as we saw Niklas going slightly right, he has this low ceiling to contend with, but other than that, the right side is actually quite okay. You know, he's got this forehand look, misses the low ceiling at the beginning and puts it just inside the bullseye. That was perfect control, perfect angle, and perfect speed. That was a great shot from Niklas from the knee.
Incredibly competent with the technical plays. Niklas, Anttila, some great scrambles. We see Paul there with just an awkward stance, soft backhand hyzer. Petr here from an ideal position, about 75 or 80 into the green. Just a soft putter as well, as these guys are making short work of this approach. We see Jakub actually opting for the forehand as he catches a soft edge and skips. A little bit of a roll there to give him a few extra meters on the putt, but he is shown to be very comfortable on the green, already putting 4 in a row together. This is for 5.
Let's see, that's a great putt there from Jakub. He did the common mistake of slightly sawing it off on the approach. Discs seem to really fade a lot on this approach. Nice birdie from Paul. As it's slightly downhill, and if you're throwing an overstable approach disc, as many people are on this hole, it's easy to fade out early. As we are very likely to see a star frame here, second one of the round actually. Let's see if these players can make it in. Of course they can. That's a great score on this hole. Also one of the more scoreable holes on the course, as the players gather up for the originally tradition from Czech Republic, ringing up the chains for the star frame. Crowd really likes it. That's a good showcase of camaraderie from the card.
Putting on a show for the crowd. We go to hole 16. The last par 5 of this 18-hole layout. This sits at 302 meters. You have this initial tunnel to beat. Now, most players will opt to throw as the drone flies with a forehand or turnover backhand, but there are also some sneaky shortcut gaps on the right. Although your second shot, you then break out into this open field where it slopes left to right as well as downhill. You approach this low ceiling tunnel. As you work your way towards the green, you want to fight under all of these branches. It is quite a hard-packed earth here. The grass is quite short, and it's fairly common that you can play the skip and try to battle your way up to the green. Another par 5 where you can find trouble, but with 2 perfect shots, there have also been rumors of eagle potential. We see Paul on the tee.
Yeah, as you said, it's certainly about first 2 shots, as Paul is going for the traditional backhand straight shot, fading off early of the branch, but he's gonna have a look towards the fairway from there, so that's just okay. Jakub really hugging the right side of the corner. Ideally, if he gets through from there, he's gonna be in a great position. Didn't quite see that from there, whether he's actually on the fairway or in the bushes. And Niklas with an absolute perfect drive here. He's in the prime position. From there, it's really easy second shot. He's only has about 180 meters left to the basket. Possibly even a possibility to get it to, well, long putting range, at least for him, as we a couple of holes ago saw him make that 36 meter huge putt. And Petr also with just the perfect drive. Those guys really showed how to do it.
And with Paul up first, I think a good sign for Jakub's drive, meaning that he likely broke out into the open. Paul plays it turning over too early, but fights back well into the fairway. An interesting shot shape. I'm sure not exactly as he had in mind, but definitely a not-so-traditional line, as Petr now shaping it, also turning it over a touch too early and also fading back towards the fairway. I think this hole also had some wind. You see those branches on the left moving, looking like a headwind for these players, given the characteristics of their flights. Niklas shaping something really understable. High left hyzer release, getting a full flight, battling even up to the cameraman, making him dance. Amazing shot.
Yeah, that was great angle control there from Niklas. Not quite in putting range, but he's gonna have a short approach, maybe only about 50 to 60 meters left. And Jakub, you can see he's really trying to match the hillside with his disc, trying to get that extra glide with the second shot, and he's actually maybe just inside jump putt range, or at least a very short, easy approach for the birdie from there. That's a really good way to play this hole. Make those 2 good shots and then just have a short approach.
Petr here giving the forehand approach. Beautiful touch as he skips in the bullseye and skips out. Really nice placement by him to battle the low ceiling. I like the forehand. Paul, though, shaping a backhand hyzer to straight shot as he fights also under the low ceiling, slides it up. These guys are making this shot look easy, but it really requires a perfect control of your height to not ground it, but still make it under the low ceiling.
As Niklas does the same, he's playing more of a skip shot there with a slow approach disc, getting just outside the bullseye. That's just perfect. And you can see even Jakub having to battle with the low ceiling, even from as close as 40 meters away. He also puts it inside the circle there, expecting this to go in with his solid putting from the back nine. And he's already at -9 through the round. That's a great score to be in at this point.
As we see from Petr as well, the birdie, as he's had some struggles on this back nine, has now put 2 together in a row to be 2 under par. Niklas maintaining the pace with Semerád, matching his 9 under so far. As we see Paul make that putt, putting himself to just 1 stroke behind Jakub and Niklas at 8 under. Another star frame.
Another star frame, another shaker. You can really see how these guys are absolutely tearing this back nine apart. It's certainly, well, debatably, I think the easier of the 2 nines.
A fair statement statistically, as we see that's where players rack up their birdies, although this hole may very well be considered one of the more difficult on the back nine. Hole 17 is a par 4 at 175 meters, steeply uphill the entire way. You have OB along the left, just in front of those flags. You see the white stakes marking that out of bounds. A lot of players will, their most common mistake likely to find themselves OB left, so battling uphill, you want to use some understability and maybe an anhyzer release to get as much distance up there as you can, and then try to shape around that final guardian on the right side of the green. This one says 175. I would say playing at a minimum of 250 meters, if not more.
Yeah, it plays really long. We can see Paul going here, as you said, with a bit of an anhyzer release. The OB on the left side, actually, even though it's quite rare to see somebody throw their drive to the left side OB. I think that's because many players are very aware of the OB and rather turning it over to the right than fading out left. Jakub with a decent drive there, right next to Paul. Actually, the right side, even though it is far away from the left side OB, it's slightly more awkward for the angle of the approach. So great course design here, really forcing players to either play it safe and have a more difficult approach, or risk the OB and have a straighter look at the basket. Niklas also with a great drive there.
And Petr here with the highest drive. He will begin to fade towards out of bounds, but had enough turn to keep it close. And he is right on the line, I think, straddling both sides. A portion of his disc is touching inbounds, so he is safe. We'll see Niklas up first, looking like his understable PD now, trying to shape this around the tree, holding Anhyzer the whole way, flattens it out, and he is parked. Niklas Anttila will move to 10 under par.
Yeah, that was a great shot. Rare to see such a well-controlled backhand on this hole. It's usually a common forehand approach, as Paul shows his forehand just slightly wide of the basket. Jakub also trying to go a little bit higher, a little bit more hyzer, swing it more right. And that's a great result there, just 5 meters away.
You see Petr really far up there in that left side, allowing him an open look to the basket, also opting for the forehand, using, I believe, an overstable fairway. He shapes that one up and slides his way into circle as well. You see for these guys with the distance, all of them managing to make it to the green, no problem. Paul up first for his birdie, and a very common result, unfortunately, on this hole. Given how steep it is, the chance for rollaway is extremely prevalent. And we see Paul battling back uphill now for par. Another chain out, as he'll be tapping in a bogey.
That's a really frustrating bogey for Paul, I'm sure, after having great back nine, but just the course taking one back on this hole. I'm sure he's not blaming the course. He really has to blame the putt. That was right side, and as you said, really common to roll away on this green. as we see everybody else on the card getting their easy birdies on this, one of the most difficult holes on the back nine. Really unfortunate there from Paul. Maybe even ruining his chances of getting to the lead card for the second round.
I was going to mention the same thing. With only one hole remaining, Paul will drop to 7 under as Jakub and Niklas storm ahead to 10 under. We see here the final hole of the Konopiště Open 2023 layout. Hole 18 is a 136-meter par 3 from an elevated tee throwing downhill the entire way. You have obviously these large guardians to the left and the right. No real OB to speak of, but obviously wanting to keep it straight flying the entire way, land on the ground before this basket and slide your way up. A beautiful hole to end on, really framing the basket nicely. This one requires a great touch and precision with a low-speed disc.
Yeah, it's all about angle control here, keeping the disc straight without fading to the left, as we see Jakub going a little bit high, unfortunately fading well to the left of the basket, but fortunate break there catches the banners on the left side of the green, keeping him inside circle 2 and with a reasonable putt for the birdie finish.
Anttila, looking to shape more of a flex, doesn't quite turn it over as he flips it up to flat and comes out towards the left side. He sneaks just outside the circle, close to Jakub, just a little bit closer. I think the banners will not be in his way is the major difference between their two putts.
Certainly, and Niklas with the great putting that he's had so far this round. Looking forward to finishing with one more great putt, as we see Petr also fading out to the left. That's a really common error on this hole. It's so far downhill that the disc has a lot of time to fade left, as we see Paul actually going with the mid-range, so a little bit faster disc compared to the, I think, fast putters of the other players. And you can really see the mid-range speed, pulling it to the left and even skipping from inside the circle to the banner. But he still has a look from about 15 to 17 meters.
As they walk to their green to try and close out their rounds here, an exciting battle. We see Paul up first, catching a branch on his way, knocks his putter down. He'll be ending his round at 7 under par. We see Petr now.
Just barely missing it low, unable to finish with a birdie, although he had 3 birdies in a row from holes 15 to 17. Jakub also pulling it a little bit wide, so only Niklas possibly still has a chance for the birdie finish just from outside the circle, and that's perfectly in the middle, really capping off that great round of 11 under. That's a really hot score on this 18-hole difficult, well, not an extremely difficult, but still a challenging layout on the Franz Ferdinand disc golf course.
Really an amazing venue, and we are so fortunate to be back here with another tournament. As we see Niklas find the 11 under, Jakub ending at 10, 1 stroke behind him, Paul at 7 under, and Petr at 3 under par. Sparks are flying here as we take a look at the overall standings. Round 1 in the books, we see Niklas Anttila with that final putt taking the solo lead position at 11 under, and 3 players tied for second behind him, defining our lead card for round 2, Daniel Davidson, Jakub Semerád, and Ronnie Luukkonen.
Yeah, you can see some really hot scores on this track. It's one of the easier courses of the year, one of the more scoreable courses for sure, and it's really anybody's game. A lot of players within that, a couple of strokes from the lead.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to support this coverage, and we will see you in round 2.